powered by Riverside FM.
Quick or cryptic? This is the choice that the puzzle sections of newspapers present to us on a daily basis. But until recently, for me, this was no real choice at all. Quick crosswords were an appealing, straightforward set of clues, testing knowledge and vocabulary, whereas cryptic crosswords were baffling, frustrating, and frankly alienating. The problem with cryptic puzzles is that you need a way in. They can't just be understood cold without any prior experience or some guidance on how their clues are constructed and how to solve them. In this episode, we'll take a look at the role of cryptic clues in crosswords to give you that way in and a glimpse at the satisfaction that solving a good cryptic clue gives. For any listeners that are already familiar with cryptic puzzles, do stay tuned as you'll have a few choice clues to attempt yourselves. Getting started with cryptic crosswords is really about having some tips on how to approach the clues. The first thing to recognize is that clues are normally comprised of several parts, and therefore there are almost always two ways to solve a particular clue. Part of the clue is normally the literal meaning of the answer, and the rest of the clue is an alternative, more lateral way to get to the answer. These lateral clues can include anagrams, i.e. a mix-up of the letters that are in the solution, hidden words, double meanings, or wordplay. The best way to illustrate some of these is to look at clues themselves. Now, I recognise that audio is probably the worst format for looking at crossword clues, but bear with me and we'll work through 3 examples. Here comes the first clue. Remote, tumbling, space rock. 6 letters. To repeat that clue, remote, tumbling, space rock. 6 letters. Now, how on earth would you approach this? Well, first, we try and identify the part of the clue that is the literal meaning. These literal meanings are normally at the start or the end of the clue. So probably the solution to this clue either means the first word, remote, or the last word, rock, or possibly the last 2 words together, space rock. The next consideration is what part of the clue is the alternative lateral solution. Here you do need to have some knowledge of how cryptic clues work. And if you do have that, you'll recognize that some words in clues point to an anagram existing. In this case, the word tumbling is an anagram identifier. It tells you that the answer is an anagram of one of the other words. In this case, the only word with 6 letters, and therefore one which can match the length of the answer, is remote. Putting this all together, so far we've deduced that we're looking for a word of 6 letters that means space rock and is an anagram of remote. The answer is therefore meteor. If you look at this written down, it will be more obvious. You'll see that meteor is an anagram of remote, and it obviously means space rock. Let's look at the next clue, one I quite like. The whole clue is some forget to get here for social gathering. 3 letters, and then 8 letters. To repeat that, some forget to get here for social gathering. 3 letters, and then 8 letters. Again, how do we approach this? First, we look for what the word means. It could be the first word, some, but that seems unlikely, given it's not a very distinctive word. So probably the whole clue means the last word, gathering, or possibly the last couple of words, social gathering. The rest of the clue is tricky. And here you need the knowledge that the word some, when used in a cryptic clue, often means that the answer is hidden in amongst the other letters. So now if we look back at the rest of the clue, which was forget to get here, you may be able to spot that hidden within that is the phrase get together. Go back to the word forget, start at where the G is, and you get, then there's to, another get, and the first part of here is HER. If you put it all together, and again I recommend writing this down, you'll have get together, which is another way of describing a gathering. Finally, my favourite clue from this episode is one which is just a double meaning. The clue here is people barely existing, ? 7 letters long. I'll repeat that. People barely existing, ? 7 letters long. Here, there's no simple way into the clue itself. The standout of the clue is the question mark at the end, and that tells you that there's something lateral going on with the clue. You need to look at each word carefully and recognize that there may be a double meaning. In this case, the word barely is spelt B, therefore when interpreting the clue, we're not just looking for barely existing in the sense that these people are only just able to survive, but we might be looking at something more literal. In this case, a literal interpretation of the word bare, as in not to be wearing anything. What kind of people live barely without clothes? Let's go back to the clue. People barely existing ? Well, the answer is nudists.